Hi, Brooke. Hi, Brooke. Before we start, I thought I'd tell you that if I do ask a hard question, I brought some friends along. It's not me, it's them. So you can't get mad at me.
How are you doing? How are you feeling?
I'm okay. The lake swells a bit, but other than that, I'm doing well. Thank you for being here. I think the timing of your presence at the conference is instrumental. And before we get into the topics I mentioned that we would discuss, I wonder if you could tell us about your personal journey and how you got to NTIA, and of course, how that might influence your role at NTIA.
Yeah, sure. Appreciate the question. Appreciate the invitation to come talk to you guys about what we're doing at NTIA, specifically rolling out the BEAD program. Really quick about me, because I think we're really more interested in the BEAD program than me, but I'm a Hill person. I started my career working for a member of the House of Representatives, moved over to work for Senator Ron Johnson, was with him for 5 years, started as his telecom LA, moved up to his deputy chief of staff. I then went over to the FCC, worked for Commissioner O'Reilly as his chief of staff for a year. Spent some time in industry at NCTA, the Internet and Television Association, and since I like being a chief of staff, when Administrator Roth got the nom, she asked me to come over to NTIA, and I joined at the end of April. And I think, how does it form my opinions? And I think you'll see this with our new administrator as well. It's, really looking to Congress and following the laws that Congress writes.
Excellent. So there's obviously been a change at NTIA. So looking ahead, what do you want the industry, state broadband offices, et cetera, to see in terms of the brand you're creating at NTIA?
Yeah, I think, there's the broader NTIA brand. We touch more than just BEAD, and then there's the BEAD brand. That's, I think, the focus of this conference. I think, just as I just said, Administrator Roth, she really focused on this at her hearing. She's going to focus on implementing the law as written. She was behind a lot of those laws through her career, so she's very familiar with the congressional intent, and we're going to deliver on the laws that Congress set forth and gave us the opportunity to get to implement. And I think, for the brand of BEAD, I think everyone would say it's benefit of the bargain. I think Secretary Lutnick has made that very clear, and that's definitely between implementing the law as written and delivering the benefit of the bargain for the American taxpayer. That's definitely been our focus as we've updated the BEAD rules this year.
So you've sought to streamline processes, and of course you've eliminated some of the requirements. What surprises have you encountered, if any? Something that you wanted to eliminate, but later decided it was more grounded than initially thought. Or maybe a new requirement that perhaps initially should have been addressed with the law, but was not.
I don't know if I want to say I'm surprised. I will just say I've been incredibly impressed by the states. State broadband offices, their goal is to get their constituents connected, to close the digital divide. The last administration stuck them in 3 years of process and hoops to jump through, and they did it. I think the results were suboptimal, but they did what they had to do to get, the money to their states. Then we come in, we change the rules. I think there was very natural frustration. Oh, we have to go back to the drawing board. We have to do another benefit of the bargain round, and we totally understand that. But they rolled up their sleeves and they did it. And I'm very proud to say that 46 states have already run their benefit of the bargain round and completed it. 8 states are in the process right now of taking applications. So this is an incredible success story. When we put the 90-day time frame on there was a lot of this is so unreasonable, and I agree. It was a tight turnaround for both the states to have to do that and for industry to have to participate in 56 different programs. But everyone is delivering, and we are so excited and confident that we're going to be able to meet the deadlines that we set forth in the policy notice.
So will there be any additional new changes we can expect in the near term?
Not changes. I will say that we view this as a collaborative process with the states. So they ask us questions, stakeholders ask us questions. As we, are implementing this, we're coming up with problems. So every time we see something, we throw an FAQ up. I think you guys might have seen we did a few today. I think as we've got a total of 115 so far. So none of the FAQs are new policy. It's just clarification as questions arise. We want to make sure every state has as much information as possible, and it's a collaborative process. So when we get these final proposals on September 4th, there's no real surprises. We're able to quickly approve them and get the money out the door.
Excellent. Can you speculate on how states will use a priority projects designation?
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that question. I think that's kind of the heart of the program, and it's really led to, I think, some confusion, some maybe misinformation out there. I've heard this claim that this is going to lead to Americans getting unreliable broadband. Nothing could be further from the truth. Congress set a standard of priority broadband project. That is what we have to look to first. In order for industry to compete among one another, they have to first be determined to be priority broadband projects. Congress determined that they wanted this to be a state-by-state process, that the states would have the best knowledge on the ground of what their needs were. And so we are given deference to the states to determine on a project area by project area basis what's a priority broadband project. It has to meet the congressional definition, serve 120, latency requirements. We have the requirement for scalability, and not only be able to meet 5G technology, but successor technologies as well. So there's no unreliable broadband. It's part of this competitive process. The only people that are competing are reliable broadband services, priority broadband projects. And states are going to have the ability to go project area by project area and determine what is a priority broadband project.
Okay, so here we go with the first really good zinger for you. Okay, so some critics have said that focusing on the low-cost option will repeat mistakes of RDOF, and that upfront cost doesn't account for fiber's longevity and potential sustainability issues with other technologies like satellite. So what is your response to that?
So I think, again, RDOF didn't have this definition of priority broadband projects, and that's what Congress put in the law. It really protects the BEAD program. RDOF, there's a lot of lessons learned. There's a critique of RDOF that because it was a reverse auction, it was a race to the bottom. You don't get to a race to the bottom in BEAD because you have to be a priority broadband project to even get in the race. I think some results are going to be satellite. Some results are going to be fiber. We're hearing from providers today that their companies are changing their bids. They originally bid fiber because fiber was the only thing they were allowed to bid. Well, now they're bidding in some places coax, some places fixed wireless. So, we're opening up this program to real competition. There was a public press report about a state where previously, under the last administration, only one provider participated in that project area. Now there's 4 providers going head-to-head providing competition. So, I think in the long run, we're injecting competition into the program with all very reliable broadband projects.
So just to add on to that question, do you think, based on what you just said, that this, in fact, if we go back to the very beginning of this, of BEAD, I think a lot of people were happy to say that this was the once-in-a-generation funding program. Do you still believe that?
Yeah. I think at the end of the day, we hope that this is the last federal government program on broadband, that we close the digital divide, and we take that very seriously.
Okay, so there have been some reports, and I'm sure you heard this morning, I talked a little bit about the controversy that, well, we didn't know it, I didn't know it last year, but certainly this year, a keynote we did on Starlink last year would contribute to some of the controversy this year. So some of the critics, or some of the reports, on satellite companies, they're really being aggressive in their bidding, coming in at low cost for most, if not all, locations. I mean, is it possible that BEAD ends up sending more money to to satellite than other technologies, and it benefits Amazon and SpaceX. And I really want to turn this question into a question about the consumers, because one would argue that there are places that have access to satellite today, but for whatever reason, the consumers aren't choosing it. So how would you respond to that?
Yeah, so I guess I can take that part first. I feel like I've kind of answered the first part. States are going to be able to determine what's a priority broadband project, and only priority broadband projects are really competing for the lowest cost. So it's only lowest cost once you're determined to be a priority broadband project. So, you know, at the end of the day, our goal is a mix of technologies to serve this very diverse country, based on different needs that different communities have because of their density, their topography, their geography. And that's why it's important for states to go on a project area by project area basis and make this determination, not this blanket determination that the last administration made. I think going to your point on satellite, let's say hypothetically the whole program is satellite. I don't think that's going to happen, but it's not going to be the satellite that's available to them today. They have to be a priority broadband project satellite company. That means they have to offer certain speeds. They have to have certain quality of service. Our rules specifically said they had to provide the consumer equipment to the consumer for free up to 3 times. That's not a requirement anywhere today. I think some argue the biggest impediment to adoption of satellite is marketing. They only get money, their money is driven by getting consumers, by the capacity that they're renting out. So there's a lot of things in the BEAD program that makes this not just, oh, you had satellite available to you today, now it's available to you, and we paid these companies all this money to make it available, what was already available. It's an upgraded system for sure.
Okay, so I think this is a good time to sort of stop a little bit and ask if there are any questions in the audience before we move on to our next questions. Are there any questions from the audience? If you could just wait for the mic.
Yeah, thanks, Brooke, for joining us. I'm Bill Blackford from Farmers Telephone and FTI Wi-Fi in Southwest Colorado. I participated in the first BEAD program and then also in the new BEAD program. As a small business, the cost of having to reapply for a very difficult area was extreme. And I'm just kind of curious whether that was something that was a consideration through the new bargain for BEAD process.
I mean, absolutely. And I think, you know, you also, last time you participated, you were participating on a program that was very onerous, put a lot of requirements on you in regards to climate change, in regards to rate regulation, and those are all gone. So you're definitely having to, you know, we did say people could just stand on their current bid if they wanted to, but we also gave people the opportunity to refresh their bids, given that all of these burdens had been lifted. So I think, you know, at the end of the day, this is a better program. There's a lot less burdens applied to you, and hopefully some of those cost savings made up for it.
We could take one more if there's one more question.
Hello? Hello?
I can't see anything. So.
I can't see either, really.
Hello.
There's someone maybe standing over there.
Yeah. Hello. Randy Leaning with Broadband Toolkit. I have a question about project area size and just the decision-making process that the state broadband offices need to undertake. Basically, when we do studies for, say, at a county level, we often find that an ideal deployment would be, you know, even in very rural areas, fiber, and then as you get out from clusters of people, satellite. And there are a lot of states that have, you know, fairly large project areas. So they're not, you know, there's some that are tiny, you know, where maybe it's 1,000th of a state, but other ones where it's large. And so one of the questions that a broadband office is going to need to answer is they could either award to fiber, in which they're building very remote areas, or they could award to satellite, in which case they're pushing the satellite to deploy in an area where it may not really be well suited to do that. So it's a very kind of binary outcome. And then there's also the question of, if the NTIA doesn't like the result, will they override it? So there's a lot of, so to me, the State Broadband Office has some, kind of given the history of the program and the project area sizes, some complicated decisions. So any thoughts on that, and particularly on the predisposition of the NTIA to override decisions of states, and under what circumstances?
Yeah, I think we did think about that specific issue, and we did in our updated guidance say that a provider doesn't have to bid for the entire project area. You have the situation where maybe in most of the area, it's only $2,000 to build out to the household, but the house up on the mountain that's in the same project is $200,000, and that skews the entire bid. So we did say they could pull out houses where that may not make sense. So I don't think it is a binary choice. I think we gave them some flexibility there. I think on the question of when we're going to second guess, we're actually doing preliminary meetings with the states this month. In fact, I'm taking a red eye back tonight so that we can do our first one tomorrow. So we're having these conversations with the states to kind of understand where they made the cuts, why they made the cuts. I think the goal is no real surprises in the final proposal. We specifically chose not to draw a hard line on a specific number, because what may be egregious in North Carolina isn't egregious in Wyoming. All these states are very different, and it's hard to come up with this magic number. But I think, again, we're looking for states to be implementing our policy notice, and when we feel like they're not making decisions that are in line with congressional intent or getting the benefit of the bargain, we're gonna have some questions, and we're gonna have conversations. But I think it's a very dialogue situation with the states, and I don't think there'll be really any huge surprises.
Okay, so the Republicans criticized the Biden administration for moving too slowly on BEAD. But the policy notice required states to restart the subgrantee selection process and canceled the final proposal approval for three states that were on the verge of construction. So what do you say to critics who say you've taken a slow-moving program and delayed it even further?
I think we have done everything we can on our side to speed up the process. We've eliminated a lot of the administrative process on our end. We set these really tight 90 days, which states are delivering on. A lot of that actually moved up states' final proposal deadlines for many states across the country. We're also working on the back end on permitting reform. We just launched a tool that will help speed up broadband deployment, actual deployment, and getting broadband to constituents on the back end. So, I understand. We could have just rubber stamped what the last administration did, and that would have moved quicker. But at the end of the day, we think that would have given us suboptimal results. And I'll just give you one example. We had, in those states that had final proposals, they had multiple households where you were building fiber to one household for $100,000 or more. I don't think anyone can say that's good policy. So that we couldn't tinker around the edges. We had to do this additional round to really inject this administration's priorities into the program. We think in the long run, it's a much better program. It will be better for our constituents. It will be better for the taxpayer. And it was worth the 90-day delay. I will tell you one thing, we're not going to squander 3 years.
Okay, so do you think you'll meet the deadline for approving final proposals by the end of the year? And second part of that question is, when should we realistically expect projects to be funded and we break ground?
So our secretary testified at a hearing this summer that we were going to get money out the door by the end of the year. We are working backwards towards that. It's a process. States have to submit their final proposals to us. We have to approve those final proposals. We then have to get our grant manager NIST to get the money out the door. So, again, states have done an amazing job. They're meeting their deadlines. We're going to meet our deadlines. For the states that submit on September 4th, we're looking at October timeframe, November, when we really need to get those approved so that NIST can have at least a month to process those grants and get them out the door. It's realistic. We're very optimistic. We think the majority of the states will see money and be able to break ground. Every state is different. They have different build seasons. Northern states may have to wait till the summer. Southern states can break ground immediately. So I think, we could see some really early successes next year.
Awesome. So a California lawmaker recently pulled a bill that would have mandated a $15 a month affordable internet tier. And she cited NTIA's BEAD rules, which say that states can't set a specific price for low-cost options. This is a major change from the Biden administration. So what is the Trump administration's approach to low-cost plans?
Following the law. It's really easy. The law said we couldn't rate regulate. The last administration thought they could get cute and say, well, we're not rate regulating, we're just forcing the states to do so. We're not going to support backdoor rate regulation. I think this one was the easiest one to fix because it was very clear that Congress did not want rate regulation. There was a colloquy on the Senate floor between two of the major drafters saying under no condition are we rate regulating in this bill. It's trapping broadband providers into prices that they cannot afford is going to lead to an unsuccessful program. That's not good for constituents. That's not going to make this the final broadband program. So we just went back to following the law. Industry is going to submit low-cost service options as required by the law, and that's how we're going to proceed.
And I think there are alternative approaches to this topic as well. I know in the city I live in, the city of Fort Collins, they actually take a portion or a percentage of the profits that they make, it's a municipal utility, by the way, each month, and they put that money towards low-cost projects or low-income housing so that they are basically creating their own affordable broadband program through their own profit.
Yeah, the law requires any BEAD participant to offer a low-cost service option, and that requirement is still there.
Right. So the policy notice punted any decision on non-deployment funds, and I know there's a lot of interest in this topic, to a later date. There are some organizations, including those that lean conservative, who say that using non-deployment funds to help with adoption and affordability is maybe even more important than infrastructure when it comes to closing the digital divide. Do you agree with that assessment, and when should we expect a decision on non-deployment funds?
I feel like I kind of sound like a broken record, but we're just following the law. This is a deployment program. It's not a non-deployment program. Congress set specific requirements on how you spend the money. The first thing is you fund unserved areas. Then you fund underserved areas. Then you fund community anchor institutions. And then if there's any money left over, you go to non-deployment. And so when we came in the door, our immediate goal was, how do we fund these unserved areas? How do we get money out the door? We cannot delay people any longer. And that was all of our efforts. That was all of our focus. And, at the end of the day, I think there's going to be money left over. I think we're going to deliver on the benefit of the bargain, and we will figure out how much we have for non-deployment. Is it $5 billion? Is it $10 billion? Is it $20 billion? We don't know. And I think until we know how much money we're talking, it's hard to talk about the policy. I will say, everyone has an idea for how they want to spend non-deployment money. It's pretty broad. And so it's something that we should spend some time on. It's something we should think about. But right now, when you talked about the deadlines, are we getting money out the door this year? Yeah. We have to focus on that right now.
Yep. So if history is any barometer of the truth, we're going to have project fails. So how will compliance, and I think this is another really important question, but how will compliance and ISP accountability be tracked and ensured to avoid, some of the same pitfalls we've experienced with programs like RDOF?
One advantage of BEAD getting delayed is that we have a lot of lessons learned from a lot of these other government programs that occurred during COVID. So We have lessons learned from RDOF. We have lessons learned from the Treasury Capital Projects Fund. States did a lot of their own grants. So we also have state broadband offices who have been not just getting set up, but they've been now in business and working with their communities for the last 3 to 4 years. So I think we have the right people in place. We have a lot of lessons learned both on the industry side, but also on the government side to not fall into those same pitfalls as, previous government programs. I mean, like Alad just said, this isn't easy. Building broadband networks is not easy. Making it in rural areas, even harder. And what the last administration did was they took a really hard job and they made it unnecessarily harder by adding all of these unnecessary requirements to companies who wanted to participate. So, I think applying lessons learned on the front end, but also, accountability is a big thing. We want this program to be successful. NTIA had the fortune of being able to oversee this program. We have to earn that and continuously earn that. And so, we have accountability measures in place. States have their own clawback provisions. NTIA has its own clawback provisions. So right now we're in the distribution phase. When we get into the implementation phase, it's something that we're going to be watching very closely.
So just as a follow-up question to that, there have been some recent defaults to RDOF. Is there any hope at all for those census blocks that were defaulted on for BEAD?
So it's really hard because, I worked on this with mapping, and mapping is not static. Maps always change. And we had to draw the line somewhere so that states could begin their benefit of the bargain round. We actually, on the day we released the restructuring policy notice, unbeknownst to us, there was a major RDOF default. And we worked really hard to say, well, that can be included because it was the same day. But things that have happened since then, at some point we just had to draw a line and get the benefit of the bargain program. You said this morning. We can't let perfect be the enemy of the good here. We have to get communities connected. We could spend the next 3 years debating the policy cuts, or we could actually be productive, roll up our sleeves, and get things done.
Yeah, thank you for that. So broadband infrastructure is sort of a vanilla topic, and it seems like it would be non-political, but as you know, it's not. But of course, with BEAD at every turn, BEAD has seemed to be more divisive politically. So how can the newer leadership at NTIA stay on mission and lower political temperature, or at least not raise it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, the bipartisan infrastructure law was just that. It was bipartisan. There were a lot of things that were significantly debated, like rate regulation, that, it kind of fell on the floor. It didn't make it to the final cut. And then unfortunately, the last administration took all of these niche issues that had been debated and rejected and applied it in their NOFO. They took a bipartisan issue and made it partisan. And what we've done is we've restored the NOFO, the policy notice, to the congressional intent. And it was a bipartisan bill. It's a pretty easy program to defend because we're just doing what Congress told us to do. We're happy to work with all states, red states, blue states, to get this right and to get this done, meet with any lawmaker. Again, we just want to be productive. We just want to get this done. We want this to be successful. I think, again, as you said, our communities need internet. They don't have time for bureaucrats to keep debating the right answer here.
Right. All right, so one last question for me. And this might be a tough question, but I feel like it has to be asked, and that is, what does NTIA say to the smaller providers who spend a lot of time, money, emotion, effort in bidding on projects in the first go-around of BEAD, that now are told they have to go back and sort of repeat that process? And for a lot of companies, that's unattainable. So what would you say to that, or what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think this was similarly asked in the audience, but again, there were a lot of burdens that were removed from this program this go around. So you're getting a lot of benefits here. government dollars come with strings. I think a lot of industry and a lot of states have really rolled up their sleeves to take on the expense, the time, the effort to make this program right. I think at the end of the day, the way the previous administration implemented the program was not going to lead to the results that would benefit the American people. This is what we had to do to get it right.
So, do we have any questions from the audience? And again, I can't see if people are raising their hands.
There's someone
Yeah.
at the table right there.
Okay, just wait for the mic.
Hello? Yeah, there we go. Hi, Jason Mocha. I'm the CEO of Core Fiber Partners. Thank you for all your work. I read an article yesterday around, it made a comment, which was cheap today equals slow forever. And you made a comment earlier around that you feel or hope that this is the last of funding programs through NTIA. Maybe you didn't mean that, but if there is money left on the table, do you anticipate there to be more grant opportunities funded through the NTIA that will bring fiber closer into smaller communities?
So I think what you're saying is that satellite is cheap on the front end, but in the long term is more expensive, and that fiber is the future-proof network that we should be focused. I mean, is that?
Yes, essentially. The long-term benefits of the best program today that can yield future-proof type abilities for households that live in the rural parts. It's the classic question of, if you're cheap today with an inexpensive solution that doesn't scale to the means of which fiber optics does, is there a way to be able to eventually get there, being that it feels like America is a little behind in this race?
I mean, I think, again, the only way to go head-to-head and compete on price in this program is if you're a priority broadband project. You're only a priority broadband project if you can meet the speed, the latency, and the scalability requirements. I think we just heard Comcast speak about how they're upgrading and investing in their network. Every network needs to be upgraded, including fiber. You have a lot of these small fiber guys saying, we need the FCC to continue its high cost fund so they can pay our operating expenses that we're going to need as we do BEAD. So everyone is going to have this increased need for upgrading their systems. That's just the broadband network. Satellite's going to have to upgrade by launching another rocket. Fiber's going to have to upgrade their networks as well. So upgrades are going to continuously going to be needed. Again, I don't really view it as being the cheap option. I view it as what's the best benefit for the American customer once you've established that you're a priority broadband project and offer the speeds and the latency and the scalability requirements set forth by Congress. This is not a race to the bottom. This is deciding who's the best among the top. And again, the question on a future grant program, that's up to Congress. If Congress wants to fund more grant programs, that's up to them. But our hope is they won't need to.
Right. Any other questions? This is your chance, your final chance.
There's someone over there.
I can't see. Sorry, I can't see you. Sorry. I see it now.
Oh.
Just wait for the mic, please.
Can I go, Jeff?
Sure.
I'm right here.
Okay.
Just on the scalability question, I'm right here, ma'am, in front, right here. But the scalability, and we talked about this last year, when you look at the benefit of fiber, say, that provides the resiliency, and a lot of Colorado, for example, is very fire prone. You have a lot of big storm events. Does the resiliency include the type of future-proofing and fireproofing and flood-proofing? Because if that's not a consideration, then it seems that we're at risk for the systems to be destroyed as you know, the storm events and the potential impacts like the fires happen. Love your perspective on that. Thank you.
Well, look, I mean, I think a major event is going to wipe out all types of technologies, but again, states have the ability on a project area by project area to determine what's a priority broadband project and what's not. So in a case where there might be extreme weather that comes through, maybe they determine certain technologies can't weather that storm and cannot be a priority broadband project. That's something that we're looking to the states to for guidance, because Congress said they were the experts on what their communities needed, not federal government.
This gentleman back here.
I'll do one question and I'll run it over to you. Thank you both for being here and for this candid conversation. We really appreciate it. My name is Jennifer Hickerson with Baker Tilly. And on the topic of priority broadband projects, the previous program included alternative technologies, which was taken out with the policy notice. And unlicensed fixed wireless was determined to be a reliable service and therefore served where demonstrated. However, satellite was not at that point in time. Can you give a little insight into why that decision was made in that way? And further, does it give us insight and state broadband offices insight into how NTIA will be thinking about that reliability and scalability over time?
I mean, look, we didn't want a situation where we said if satellite can provide service to you, then there's no unserved areas, because then there would probably be no unserved areas in America. You know, we still wanted to have a BEAD program. So that was the cut we made there. I think eliminating alternative technologies from our policy notice, we eliminated it because it wasn't necessary. It was, the last administration created a 3-tiered system of technologies, and we said everyone who thinks they're a priority broadband project, you have the opportunity to make your case and participate.
All right, my name is Shaq Powers. I'm with Region 9 Economic Development District in Southwest Colorado, serving 5 counties and 2 tribes and 10 municipalities. First of all, thank you for being here. Second, I wanted to speak to some of the NTIA's priorities, and not necessarily just under your administration, but going back to the way BEAD was conceptualized and RDOF as well, that these were set out to get last mile services, broadband to the home. And as a result, in our region, we're going to be building fiber to everybody's homes, but we haven't had a robust middle mile program yet. So essentially, we're gonna have a bunch of driveways that don't connect to a highway. And with all the returned RDOF funds, is there gonna be a possibility in the future to fund some of the middle mile infrastructure projects? Because in our region, we're going to have communities with fiber to the home that still have 40 miles between communities with no link in between them. And so what are the future plans to address some of the middle mile infrastructure, since we're building the driveways first, even though there's no highway?
Yeah, and I'm sorry to punt, but that's just not a question for NTIA. I think that's a question for Congress. If Congress has funded middle mile programs in the past, NTIA has overseen one. We doled out, I think, $1 billion on middle mile. If Congress sees fit to have another middle mile program, then that's their choice.
Brooke, thank you for being here. Your timing couldn't have been better, and I really appreciate your candor, so thank you. It's been a joy to have you.
Thanks for having me.